Live from Toronto, Canada, The Conspiracy Show, Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio, AM 740.
And welcome to the Audio Imaginarium. Come on in, weary traveler, hang your cloak on a peg, grab a stool, and come warm yourself by the fire. There are stories to be told, and you are among friends. Open lines this hour. Ask me anything. And Rosemary Ellen Guiley, paranormal investigator, lecturer, best-selling author, she'll be here in hour 2 for our regular monthly Paranormal News Roundup. And in the second half of hour 2 with Rosemary, we'll talk about a form of divination to contact the dearly departed called Black Mirror Scrying. That's all coming up. But as I say right now, open lines and the numbers to get in on the conversation in the Greater Toronto area, 416-360-0740. 416-360-0740 and toll free from just about anywhere. 1-866-740-4740. And I'm also extending an invitation to those of you in our live stream chat tonight to submit questions this hour. We are live streaming on our YouTube channel, Strange Planet. Before that, let me extend my sincere thanks once again to our Star Chamber supporters, Kirk Schammel, or Scammel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Kirk, down in Arizona, Brad Robinson, and Denny Bladell, or Blaisdell. I believe it's Denny Bladell. Your support is absolutely tremendous. I can't thank you enough. And from everyone here on The Conspiracy Show and Strange Planet Productions, Kirk, Brad, and Denny in our Star Chamber tier at patreon.com. Thank you so much. Also, it's time for our monthly draw for Strange Planet merchandise. And this month's winner of, I'll hold that up there. Can we see that? Strange Planet Volume 2. That's a collection of my weekly radio feature. And the winner is Wooly. Just goes by the name Wooly, just like Cher, Sting, one name. Wooly's in Washington State. Congrats, Wooly. We'll send that out to you in the mail first thing tomorrow. To become eligible for the monthly draw for Strange Planet merch, go to patreon.com/Strange Planet. Patreon.com/Strange Planet and become a monthly supporter. All right, this hour, open lines, those numbers again, 416-360-0740, 416-360-0740, and toll free from out of town, 1-866-740-4740. Ian Robertson back in studio in Liberty Village will be your concierge. He will take your calls, and we've opened those lines to you now. So to get this rolling, let me throw out a couple of things. Well, it's really one thing that involves a number of related issues, but it really relates to the culture war in which we are now engaged, and it is quickly becoming, if it has not already become, a non-shooting civil war. Let me stress, it's a non-shooting civil war, and I pray it remains non-violent and doesn't degenerate any further. But make no mistake, we are on the cusp of civil war, again, in terms of the culture war. And I had a caller. I don't want to be overly dramatic here, but I think it's time to be honest with ourselves. Now, I had a caller on Coast to Coast this past Friday during open lines. She was actually calling from Thornhill. Well-intended, I'm sure. She seemed like a very pleasant lady. And I'm only pointing her out because this is how I'm getting into the conversation. I'm not implying that she was being militant in any way, but she started proselytizing about the virtues of a vegan lifestyle, which is fine, and how eating meat was wrong and how it's destroying the planet. Now, I'm a meat eater, unabashedly so. I think eating red meat in moderation is healthy, and I've made that decision for myself. I need meat. I like meat. I like the taste of it. I don't apologize for eating meat. I don't intend to stop eating meat. And I've tried during Lent to abstain from eating meat. 40 days without meat. That's a tall order for me. I actually did it once. I did it for maybe a week, and I did not feel right. I was about a week in, and I was in a fog. I was getting headaches. So, again, I'm all about live and let live, and I would never try and force my dietary choices on anyone, my lifestyle choices. And most vegetarians and vegans, I know, don't try and force theirs on me. It's the militant ones I find objectionable. And again, I'm not saying the caller on Coast from Thornhill was being militant, but she was insistent. Now, here's the problem. We now have socialists. I'd go further and call them avowed Marxists, like this new star of the Democratic Party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, fast becoming a Republican Party secret weapon, although I don't think she realizes it yet. But she's unveiled her new Green Deal. And everyone on the left in her party is jumping on board, because if you're not with AOC, you're against her. And, the mood is such right now that you have to be with AOC if you're on the left. If you're not aligned with her, then you're part of the elite. That's just the way it's breaking out. And when it was unveiled, this new Green Deal, it included proposals to ban meat. Can you imagine? Under the force of coercion is what we're talking about. But it went further. That's just the tip of the spear. It included proposals to ban flying. It wants to get rid of fossil fuel, or at least achieve what they call a carbon neutral economy within 10 years. It sounds wonderful, that part of it. I'm all about free energy. If it's out there, we haven't seen it yet. And until we see it, until whoever has it decides to give it to the rest of us, we are reliant on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are here for the long term. I say long term, I'm talking about the next probably 25 years. People are not buying electric vehicles. What are you going to do? Are you going to force them? She's proposed guaranteeing free education, free healthcare, and a guaranteed, get this, a guaranteed income for everyone who can't work or is not willing to work. Now, once this was revealed and the backlash came from ordinary, normal, rational people, including liberals, because most liberals are. I'm not talking about liberals here. I'm talking about the radical left. It's an important distinction. When they realized, or when she had realized, and her minions had realized they'd gone way too far, way overboard. This was crazy, delusional stuff. She got way out over her skis. Then she claimed, her minions claimed, we never proposed things like banning meat and banning flying. That was just something, well, first they lied. They said, no, that's not true. We never ever proposed that, because immediately they took that document offline. But of course, in the age of the internet, nothing can be deleted entirely. Someone grabbed a screenshot. It was presented to them. Aha, here's the proof. And then, of course, they changed their tune. Well, that was just a rough draft. It was never intended. It was posted by accident. Sure. But you see, they will lie to your face. They will say anything to achieve their agenda. It's a radical Marxist agenda we're talking about here. And unfortunately, it does appeal to millennials in the United States in particular. Have you seen the latest polls? Somewhere between 43 and 53%, depending on the poll. 43 and 53% of millennials in the United States now say they would prefer to live in a socialist or communist country. Can you imagine we would ever arrive at this place in time? So when someone from the radical left, not ordinary liberals of good conscience, I'm talking the radical left that has hijacked the Democratic Party, that is quickly hijacking the Liberal Party here in Canada, they're all about pushing boundaries, floating really, really radical ideas that seem and are absurd on the face of it. But they repeat them enough, and they push and they push. And we negotiate, and we give them just a little bit. and then they come out again and they push a little bit further and push. The process is called gradualism. And they'll tell you it's only a proposal. Don't believe them. Because their backroom credo, their playbook is by any means necessary. Lie if you have to. Tell them one thing and do another. Because at the root of it, they have contempt for the voter. They have contempt for citizens. We're stupid. We're deplorable. We don't know what's good for us. But they do, of course. Now, the problem is, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is very endearing. She's young and she's charming. And she has a wonderful story. Working her way up. Started out as a bartender. I think that's inspirational. She sounds well-intentioned, but make no mistake, she and her ilk would love to ban flying. They would love to ban meat. They'd love to ban personal automobiles. They hate cars. They hate private property. They hate Western civilization. They hate liberal democracy. They hate classical liberalism. They hate the West. That is what we're up against. It starts out with a proposal. Maybe we should think about banning meat. But this is the end game. This is what it's all about. Just thought I'd get that off my chest and throw that out there. However, it is open lines. You can ask me anything. Let's start off with Kevin in Etobicoke. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the Conspiracy Show. How are you?
I'm good, Richard. I'm kind of frightened after just listening to what you said. That's very disturbing.
Well, forewarned, forearmed, as they say. This is what we're up against.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I phoned in a few years ago, talked to you about, I told you a story about the fortune teller who foresaw her own death, if you remember.
That does sound familiar, yes.
Yeah, well, that was a lot of years ago now. But I had a couple questions for you, if I could. They both concern the European Union. And one is, we used to hear all the time about Greece is on the brink of economic collapse, Italy is about to collapse, Portugal is collapsing, and I don't think we hear that anymore. Do you know why?
Well, when it comes to Greece, I think they continue to sort of paper over the problem. Now, as far as I know, the emergency bailouts have stopped. The extreme measures that Greece has taken, fiscal measures, cutting back on pensions, which has done tremendous, has caused tremendous pain. I think they're sort of working in the short term. Greece has slowly sort of started to climb out of this economic morass that has really gripped the country for the last, decade and a half, 20 years. Of course, they never should have been allowed into the EU, and we now understand how that happened. Little chicanery and cooking the books and so forth. Because in order to qualify to get into the EU, your GDP to debt ratio had to be at a certain level. Theirs was not. So, they hired some people. They fiddled with, they fudged the numbers, in other words. So there was clearly some fraud happening there, but they got into the EU. So it seems like Greece is sort of back on their feet. They're a little wobbly on their pins. However, yeah, you're right. We don't hear a lot about that. I haven't heard the latest from Portugal. Italy's debt to GDP is absolutely unsustainable. I mean, it's careening out of control. Has been out of control. They have a populist government, which is kind of an unlikely duo of the Northern League, which is sort of an ultra-conservative party, and then you've got Five Star, which is a sort of left of center, very left of center, sort of strange bedmates. But at the moment, they seem to be making it work. Are they going to be pushing for what do they call the Italian version of Brexit? I'm not sure.
I forget.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So you're right. We haven't heard. Right now, the EU has its hands full with Britain. And when is that deadline for Brexit? Is it March 25th?
Well, that was my other question. I was going to ask if you think Brexit will ever happen.
I think it will. The question is, I think it has to. I think if they were to, I don't even think I think it's too late now to reverse course and try another referendum. The question is, how messy is this breakup going to be? And will Britain have any sort of deal in place? Of course, the EU is using these tremendous scare tactics that if there's no deal, they will have virtually no trade with Europe, which is nonsense. There will be trade. I think it'll be very challenging for Great Britain in the short term, but they can certainly reach out and have very strong bilateral trade agreements with the United States, with Canada, with other Commonwealth countries. I think there will be some short-term pain and some uncertainty. The markets won't like it in the beginning, but it's going to happen. How messy it gets, well, I mean, it's been pretty messy so far, just getting from that original vote to leave the EU to now. And that's going to intensify as we lead up to the actual D-Day. But yes, it's going to happen. As for Greece, Italy, Portugal, I don't know. I think the EU will, what's going to happen is it'll happen in stages. It'll break off. There'll be regional EUs. There'll be a northern EU, maybe a central and a southern EU. And then gradually they'll break off. I see it sort of unfolding and unwinding slowly. Others see this sort of crumbling down very quickly. Whatever the tipping point is, it's going to collapse like the Eastern Bloc and the Berlin Wall. So, but if I was a betting man, I would say it's going to be the latter. It's going to be a slow unwinding, but the EU will eventually crumble. You cannot have the drachma, the Greek drachma, under the same currency umbrella as the Deutschmark. It's unsustainable. I hope that answered your question.
Thanks a lot, Richard.
I appreciate it. Thank you. 416-360-0740 and toll free from out of town 1-866-740-4740. Just checking the YouTube channel, the YouTube live stream. I'd like to hear Richard's thoughts on the mass immigration in Canada from Pete. Well, obviously, I have to preface my comments by saying the obvious. We are a nation of immigrants. I support immigration, sustainable levels of immigration. But if we're talking about mass migration of the illegal sort, then obviously I'm not in favor of that. The problem is we've signed on to this UN accord on mass migration. And they want to muddy the water. They want to muddy the terms. So there's no such thing as an illegal immigrant now. It's an undocumented worker. I'm sorry. I don't play those word games. An undocumented worker is an illegal immigrant, and I am opposed to illegal immigration. Obviously, I mean, we don't have the same situation here in Canada as they do in the United States with their porous southern border, but we do have people coming from the United States who are illegal there. They are seeking refuge here. And, they're being put up in hotels and so forth on our dime. And it's just not right. And it can't be allowed to happen. Unfortunately, the political climate is such that you're not even allowed to talk about it. And part of this new UN migration accord is, to me, it smacks of re-education camps. So journalists are going to learn the new vernacular, the new language. And part of that is we don't use the term illegal anymore. So this whole, I mean, it used to be a very radical concept. And there was this group called No One is Illegal. And now it's becoming mainstream. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I believe in the nation state. And they've tried to co-opt the term nationalist. That nationalist now, that's a dirty word. Well, it has been used by certain individuals in a very odious manner who had obviously malevolent intentions, Adolf Hitler and so forth. But that was Hitler. That was then. I'm not talking about that kind of nationalism. I'm talking about in a fervent support in the nation state. And I am a nationalist. I don't care what anyone says. They're not going to take that word away from me. I'm a nationalist. I believe in the nation state. I believe in borders. I believe in the rule of law, because it is the rule of law that keeps us free, not democracy. That's part of it, but it is the rule of law. And one of the most important rules of law has to do with the border. You have to establish a border, and you have to enforce that border, because that is an expression of the nation state. I'm not a one-worlder. I'm not a globalist. I'm not a citizen of the world. I'm a citizen of Canada. So those are my thoughts on mass immigration. Legal immigration, yes, in sustainable numbers. Immigration must serve the needs of the citizenry. It is an extension of economic policy. It's not a feel-good measure. All right, we'll take a quick time out, come back. More open lines. Richard in Indianapolis when we come back, right here on The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Syrett. Don't go away.
Curiosity, or did the devil make you do it? Whatever the reason, welcome back to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio. To talk to Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
So what do you think? Cabin this weekend?
In our car? Oh, the weather doesn't look great. There's barely a road up there. What's the point in a getaway if you can't?
Hey friends, don't know if you heard the news, but the good people at YouTube arbitrarily decided to demonetize my YouTube channel, Strange Planet. Now, they claim that we are re-uploading content that doesn't belong to us, which is entirely false. I own The Conspiracy Show. Of course, I own Conspiracy Unlimited, and I own the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. And all of those and this radio show can be found on the YouTube channel. Now, we are reapplying for reinstatement in about 30 days. I'm not sure if we'll prevail. Something tells me we won't. It seems as if YouTube is targeting programs like mine. However, I need now your support more than ever. We've taken a big financial hit by losing the monetization on YouTube. So now I need your help more than ever. I hope you'll consider becoming an official supporter of The Conspiracy Show, the YouTube channel, and my podcast, Conspiracy Unlimited. Here's what you need to do. Go to patreon.com/Strange Planet. Patreon.com/Strange Planet. And consider donating $50 a month, $20 a month, $10 a month, or whatever you feel comfortable giving. Thank you so much. I've never needed you more.
It's Hakeem Optical's big winter sale. All Hakeem designer frames and lenses start from only $50 each when you buy 2 pairs. Also receive a digital gift card valued at $50. Look great and save big. Hakeem Optical is always saving you time and money on fashionable eyewear. HakeemOptical.ca.
Keeping an eye on the New World Order. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free 1-866-740-4740.
Hey, welcome back. Just checking the questions coming in on the live stream chat. Ralph F. asks, Richard, how many space aliens do you think you're on? How many space aliens do you think are on Earth now? I guess that was related to the illegal immigrant question, but now he's talking space aliens. 0. How's that? 0. Let's go back to, let's see, we have, is it Richard in Indianapolis?
Yes,
Hi, Richard.
How are you?
Hey, good. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. I had heard somebody comment this last week, and I don't know if they were being facetious or what, but Alexandria Cortez's New Green Deal would seek to mandate changes to farming to limit bovine flatulence, which is considered a greenhouse gas. And this only points up another flaw in her argument that if we ate more cows, we'd have less to be concerned about with that.
Well, I haven't seen that particular wording. I haven't read the entire document. The one that jumped out at me was, banning meat. So, and she's linking it obviously to, to this canard about, methane and climate change and so forth. So that wouldn't surprise me. But, can you imagine? And her timetable is, of course, because we only have 12 years left. This is our World War II. Her timetable is that in 10 years, no more fossil fuel. That's a death sentence. That's a death sentence. Can you imagine in the Midwest or right now, these last few weeks at minus 50, no heating, no natural gas. And she's also saying we're not going to solve the problem using nuclear. So I guess some free energy device is supposed to drop out of the sky within the next 10 years.
Yes, sir. I'm a truck driver here, and I go through probably 1,000 gallons of diesel fuel a week. I could not imagine an alternative to that. I mean, some trucks are running on natural gas now, but you take away those two, we've got nothing.
Well, we just haven't found anything that packs the punch of fossil fuel. And listen, I'm not saying, that there isn't the potential for some free energy device. And I know there are a lot of people that listen to this program that think that it's already out there and it's being suppressed. And I'm saying, fine, if it's there, then bring it on. But until that time, we have hitched our star to that wagon. And fossil fuel, I mean, there's a great book out there called The Moral Case for Fossil Fuel. I've tried to get the author on, but he's a very busy man. And his name, of course, escapes me right now in the heat of battle. But, fossil fuel saves lives. Think about, all of the inclement weather and how many people would freeze to death, if we didn't have heating oil. Think about how many people would, succumb to extreme heat without things like air conditioning. And many people do because they don't have access to fossil fuel, cheap, affordable, like coal. That's being denied to the developing world. They needed an industrial revolution in Africa. Let's give it to them. Let's allow them to have it. Let's help them have that. But no, we can't, because coal is verboten, which is it's a death sentence, quite frankly.
Yes, and I don't think it's any coincidence either that she's so strong against it now that we've become an exporter rather than an importer.
Yes, we have this. Well, here in Canada, we have this wonderful birthright. We have more. I think we have four times. I might be wrong. I think it's something like on the order of 4 times the oil reserves the United States has. And you are now a net exporter for the first time in 70 years? You're now a net exporter of oil? We have 4 times your reserves, but we're still getting our oil, half the country, from Saudi Arabia. It's a national disgrace. Are we a country or are we not a country?
That's right.
Richard, safe drive.
Well, that's all I had. I'm going to go out and eat a cow for the sake of the environment.
God bless you. All right, Richard, safe travels in Indianapolis. Melanie is in Toronto. Melanie, welcome to the Conspiracy Show.
Welcome, and a Happy New Year again to everybody, to all our friends in the United States and Canada. Coming from Eastern Europe, I can tell you that if this Brexit deal does go through, and if they alienate the poor socialist countries of Europe, I have a sneaky suspicion that Putin is going to jump on the bandwagon and he's going to say, you know what, we're going to give you an alliance. We've got lots of oil. We've got a lot of things that you need, we need. Why don't we be friends, friendship, That's the style of the old Soviet Union. That's the style of the foxes in Russia. So I truly believe that Putin is going to try to form an alliance with the countries that are going to be left out, like especially Greece, France, Portugal, et cetera, et cetera.
So just so I understand, Melanie, are you saying that you're fearful of Brexit because it's playing into the hands of Putin? I'm not quite sure.
Absolutely. That's the way I'm seeing it. I'm old enough to know and being brought up in the old Eastern system, this is how I see it. Because you see, China is swallowing up a lot of parts of Africa and building things and giving them things they've never had before. So Putin is going to jump on the bandwagon and say, look, we've got cheap oil, and the way that they're going to punish them once he gets them into his clutches is what he's doing to Ukraine. He's bypassing everything. He's trying to strangle Ukraine, and he's going to do the same thing to the European countries. And,
well, first of all, though, keep in mind, Melanie, that Russia is already selling its oil and its natural gas to the EU, Germany in particular. You're right.
That's right, Germany especially.
So whether the EU breaks up or not, I mean, listen, I think that he's going to do what he's going to do, but
he's going to recover.
But let's put the thread of Russia in perspective. Russia has the GDP of the state of Texas. All right, it's a minor player. The real adversary, long term, not even that long term, is China. And yes, China is. You're right. They're gobbling up huge tracts of land in Africa. They're buying up rare earth. The rare earths and so forth.
They're building infrastructure there also, which is what I think that this is how Putin is going to really influence the rest of Europe into his direction. And I think he's going to keep a stranglehold on his own people. And this is the way the cunning fox works. So this is my fear, that by voting for Brexit, we might even see Ireland, following Putin's advice and saying, "Oh, you want to be our brother? Yes, bratstvo, comrade. Yes, we'll help you." This is their style.
Well, I don't think it's an either-or proposition. I think you can still aspire to having control of your own fiscal policy, your own monetary policy, your own borders. And still, resist the clutches of the evil Russian Empire. I agree. I think you need to be mindful of that, what you're saying, Melanie. I think, yes, but Greece is in the EU, and they already have a close trade relationship with Putin. They're very cozy.
And they're also Orthodox Christians, which the Russians are.
Yes.
But you see, the whole thing with the Russian people is, yes, they have a good heart, they have a big heart, but they've suffered so much humiliation in the last maybe even 100 years, that the thing that you have to remember is that Eastern Europeans, they need their pride, whether they're Russians or Ukrainians or Belarus, White Russians or whoever. Their sense of pride has been totally destroyed, whereas America has had too much pride, and now it's destroying its pride with the extreme leftists.
Well, no, I agree with you. There was an opportunity. There was a window there after the fall of the Berlin Wall. There were promises made to Putin that NATO would not encroach 1 millimeter towards Moscow. Instead of honoring that and trying to reach out to Russia, they could have been a partner at one point, but that ship has passed. You're right. We stuck the bear.
But you're forgetting one thing. Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons because America wanted it that way, and so did Europe. And they said, yes, we'll come to your help. We'll protect you if Russia should try to take over. Well, Russia took over the Crimea, and America and the West wasn't there. So why did Ukraine give up its nuclear weapons? Why should Northern Korea give up its weapons? It's saying, look, you promised to defend Ukraine, and you haven't defended Ukraine. You've told them, get rid of your nuclear weapons. We'll protect you. The same as when the Germans attacked Poland. England had signed it. We're going to protect Poland. They never protected Poland. The Germans marched right in.
No, you're true. That you're absolutely right. That appeasement on the part of the British and the French at that point, and the United States, gave Hitler free rein, and he become brazen. And first, it was the Saarland, and then the Rhineland, and then the Sudetenland, and nobody said anything.
No, and my uncle was one of the first people that in Poland, when they attacked the post office, who's passed away, God rest his soul, he was one of the defenders in Poland. My other family was in Ukraine. I have family all over Eastern Europe. But I'll tell you something, America has not kept its promise to Ukraine. And this is why North Korea will not get rid of its weapons, because they're saying to America, look, you didn't come to the aid of Ukraine. They gave up their nuclear weapons. You think we're stupid? We're going to give it up? Absolutely not. And the reason we have all these leftists in America now is because America has never kept its promises to its allies and to people who stood up for it. We had thousands, after the Second World War, we had thousands of Eastern Europeans who committed suicide because America wouldn't allow them to come into the country, just like
Well,
Canada.
okay, but Melanie, I would disagree with you. That's not why that's not why we have the rise of the left, in my estimation. It has nothing to do with the perception of allies and so forth. We have this is indoctrination. It starts in the schools. We now have millennials who want to live in a socialist country. If they want to take a tour of Venezuela, be my guest. No, this is a cancer. I'm talking, again, I want to be very ironclad here. I'm not talking about liberal. Thank you for the call, Melanie. I want to get some others in here. I am not talking about liberals. The liberals are not the problem. We can work with liberals. We have, political differences, but we debate, we argue, and we come up with compromises. There are allies. I am talking about a different breed entirely. The radical left, which are, in fact, Marxists, and they are an existential threat. Their policies are an existential threat to Western civilization. And that's what we have to stand up against. All right, let's see. Do we have another YouTube question? Someone was asking me about space aliens. I said none. And the reason is that I have a very different view of the ET issue. I don't believe we're talking about extraterrestrials. I think we're talking about interdimensionals. And the only thing that makes sense to me as a Bible-believing Christian is that if there is some sentient being piloting these aircraft, these UFOs, they would likely be from the angelic realm or the demonic realm. So I don't believe that there are extraterrestrials from some other distant constellation, for example, here on Earth. And I know that rubs a lot of people in the UFO community the wrong way, and I've probably cut myself off from some Christmas card lists and so forth. However, you asked for my opinion, and that's it. No space aliens here on Earth. All right. The other thing that we can talk about, and I mentioned this on Coast to Coast, and I believe we are heading into a break here very soon. I talked about, this is kind of a departure from our hot and heavy conversation there, but on Coast to Coast, I mentioned recently I'd lost my wallet at the public library. It disappeared. It was gone. It vanished. And then it was there again in exactly the same place I had looked several times. So maybe when we come back, we can talk about disappearing and reappearing objects. If you're good for that, let me know. 416-360-0740. Toll free from out of town. 1-866-740-4740.
The truth will set you free. But first, it will really tick you off. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
Come From Away is the joyous, foot-stomping, and heartwarming musical that has Toronto audiences cheering. It's a powerful celebration of humanity, cheers the Globe and Mail. Come From Away has become a genuine classic, raves the National Post. And Newsweek says, Come From Away takes you to a place you never want to leave. Come From Away, now playing at Toronto's Elgin Theatre. Get tickets at 416-872-1212 or mervish.com.
Norm Edwards, come on down. You're the first celebrity at the Canadian International Auto Show.
Here's more of what you'll see on day one.
It's you. And your family in a new car.
Join us on Friday, February 15th at the Canadian International Auto Show.
Be part of Zoomer Radio's live broadcast from 1 to 6 p.m.
Gate admission is $16 for seniors 60 and over on opening day of the 2019 Canadian International Auto Show, Metro Toronto Convention Center.
Come on down.
makes swim a tropical breeze. Stop into Bathing Bell Swimwear at 355 Roncesvalles Avenue in Toronto. Swimsuits customized to fit in all the right places, even the ones you're missing.
There's good pricing, and then there's I know a guy pricing. At Goldman's Appliances, we know a guy. Actually, a lot of guys. And they make sure we have their best pricing, which means you get their best pricing too. Case in point, right now, you can save up to 20% on hundreds of Whirlpool major appliances. For the best prices on appliances like Whirlpool, you'll always get more at Goldman's. Visit Goldmans.com for details.
Don't be afraid of the dark. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio. To talk to Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free 1-866-740-4740.
Hey, welcome back. And just a reminder, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, our paranormal investigator, researcher, best-selling author, will join us at the top of the hour for the full hour, the full second hour. She joins us the second Sunday every month. And we have some fascinating stories for our paranormal news roundup. And then in the second half of hour two, she'll talk about a method of divination called Black Mirror Scrying, which she's written extensively about as well. Rosemary Ellen Guiley coming up top of the hour. Right now, we continue on with open lines. And let me give you the numbers again. 416-360-0740. That's toll free. Sorry, that's for the Greater Toronto area. 416-360-0740. Toll free from out of town. And good just about anywhere. 1-866-740-4740. 866-740-4740. Nicholas on the live stream chat is asking me, what are my thoughts on Patreon censorship? Well, it's coming. I mean, it's arrived for certain individuals. It may come my way as well. I may be directly affected. I wouldn't be surprised. It is disturbing, this trend. What they have done in social media, in politics, is they have criminalized political differences. I was talking earlier about our liberal friends and how we work with liberals. Conservatives and liberals work together, and we discuss and we form consensus. But now we have a new entity, this radical left, and what they are trying to do is to criminalize differences of opinion, and we're seeing this now in social media, where if you have the wrong opinion, you're banned. But it's worse. One could argue, well, it's a privately run company. They have that right. It's a club. And if you don't follow their rules, then you're out. But now, as we move more and more towards a cashless society and people are becoming dependent on things like PayPal and Patreon as a revenue stream, and they are being denied because of their wrong opinion. There are so many examples of people who are having a difficult time making a living. PayPal is the revenue stream. They're being cut off PayPal. Imagine if and when it comes to this, Visa or MasterCard or American Express says, we don't like your opinion. You can't use Visa anymore. Or the bank says, we don't like your opinion. You can't use the debit card anymore. Is this where we're headed, really? Is this what we want? We're heading down that road. I shudder to think. Virginia's in Hamilton. Now, Virginia, before I get you on, because you want to talk about disappearing and reappearing items, and for those who missed my Friday appearance on Coast to Coast, so I had this library book that was overdue, and I had another one on hold at the library. So it's about 5 minutes from where I'm sitting, the old village library in Thornhill. It's haunted, by the way. And so I drove over there, got out of the car, and I always keep my wallet in my hip pocket. And I know it's there because when I sit in the car, do you do this? You sit in the car and you get like hip displacement because of the wallet in the one side of your pant pocket. And I never think after 40 years of driving, take the wallet out and put it on the armrest or what have you. So it's always in my hip pocket. I go into the library, reach into my wallet or reach into my back pocket to get my library card because I want to pay a late fine and also get this book that's on hold. The wallet's not in my pocket, even though I had felt it on the drive over. I rush back out to the car, look on the car seat, look on the passenger seat, look in the armrest, look in the crevice between the seats, between the driver's side door and the seat. It's not there. I look on the road under the car. I retrace my steps. I go back to Food Basics where I was. It's not there. I go home. Now I'm in a bit of a panic, running around the house, check my nightstand. I check every coat pocket in the hall closet, even the coats I haven't worn since the spring or the fall. It's not there. I go downstairs, I check this studio, I check my office, not there. So I decide, okay, I'll go back to the library and look again. I go back out to the car, open the car door, and there is my wallet sitting on the front seat, as conspicuous as can be. What's going on? Disappearing and reappearing objects. Virginia and Hamilton, hold on, I'll get to your call when we come back. Open lines right here on The Conspiracy Show. Don't go away.
You want the truth? You can handle the truth. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio. To get the truth, call Richard now at 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
You
are amazing.
all the reservations, check. Paperwork, check. Photos, signatures, updated passports, check. Doggy daycare reservation.
Just one thing left.
Swimwear for you, your spouse, and the kids.
Relax.
Swimco's fit experts are equally amazing at helping you find the perfect swimwear, beachwear, and accessories quickly and easily.
Swimco.
Your one-stop pre-vacation shop.
Square 1, Lime Ridge Mall, and online at swimco.com.
Why did I wait so long? Our patients tell us that all the time at the Herzig Eye Institute. I'm Cherry Tab, co-founder of the Herzig Eye Institute, and Dr. Herzig and I want to ask you, why have you waited so long? You could finally be free from glasses, contacts, even reading glasses. Google high-definition vision. Learn about Herzig. Call us for a consultation. There's no charge. Afterwards, you'll say, why did I wait so long? Look after yourself. Promise me.
We're not master chefs, personal trainers, number-crunching accountants, vegan bakers, or vintage clothing curators. That would be you. We're Moneris, Canada's largest payment processor. Your business is your passion. Ours is helping you grow it. With scalable solutions and 24/7 support, Canadian businesses trust Moneris. For a limited time, sign up and get up to $300 back. Some conditions apply. Call 1-866-MONERIS or visit moneris.com.
Well, what do you think?
That's it?
What do you mean?
It should be bigger.
But I paid so much money.
It's a really small unit. Size matters. Get bigger square footage, a smaller mortgage, and a huge package of new incentives at the Bear Creek Ridge condo event in Barrie, Saturday, February 16th. A 3-bedroom in the GTA costs between $1 and $2 million. Our 3-bedroom around $500,000 and $1,000 down on signing.
It pays to leave the GTA. Plan your exit strategy today at bearcreekridge.ca.
When you look at the sky, ever wonder if someone's looking back? This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio. To speak
Welcome
with
back.
Richard live, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Hey, welcome back. Just about to launch into a discussion on disappearing and reappearing objects. All right, let's go to Virginia in Hamilton. Hey, Virginia.
Hi, good evening, Richard.
Hi
First
there.
of all, let me tell you, you're very, very right on the insidious creep of punishing people who think differently. It's there, and it is something to be quite alarmed about. I'm with you on that camp.
It's chilling, yeah, actually. It's the new era of McCarthyism.
It's worse than that. It's Orwellian to the max. And Putting that aside, though, when you were talking about losing things and finding them, strangely enough, on my way home today, I've been traveling along the Niagara Escarpment and talking with people. We had a conversation about this very same subject. And it brings to mind the fact that my mother many years ago used to say, if you lost something, pray to St. Anthony. He's a patron saint of finding things.
Yes.
And that's sort of a parochial kind of way of thinking. But back in 2007, when my sister died, the family went to the funeral. We went to the church, and my husband lost his keys. We took my mother. We didn't find out about that till I took my mother back to the long-term care center where she was. Couldn't find the keys anywhere. I had a second set of keys to drive us back. We went through the church to the church. Church was locked. Walked all over the parking lot, everywhere. And he was desperate because they had a lot of important keys on that key ring. Got back to the wake and put my purse down, went to the telephone to see if just somehow, this is before cell phone and all that, before, thinking my son may have picked up my bag or something and carried them back to the house. And he said, no, keys aren't here. And I thought, oh God, what are we going to do? Turned around the corner, picked up my purse, and as I stand here breathing, those keys were on the top of my purse.
Mm-hmm. What is that all about, Virginia?
I do not know. And I brought my husband over. We just stood and stared at them. And we just looked at each other. How could this be? Okay, we believe in things which are outside of our realm. There's no question. There is some interference and some good interference that comes from beyond when we need it. Fine. I accept that. Wonderful. I took those keys. My husband is now dead. But I took those keys. I gave them to my daughter. I said, listen, hold on to these keys. They've been somewhere. I don't know where they've been, but they've traveled. So look after them. 2009, after my husband died, I was about a month after that, I was coming home, and I had my hands filled with parcels, and my keys were in my hand. My keys dropped on the floor in the foyer. Put the parcels down, put them in the kitchen, went back to look for my keys. They weren't there. I thought, no, come on, this is ridiculous. So I looked around and thought maybe I kicked them here or knocked them somewhere. No, I'm the only one in the house. What am I going to do? So I stood in the living room and I said, okay, you're playing with me. I don't know what's going on. I'll put my keys back. I need them. I don't care what you're going to do with them. I need my keys. And I was disturbed, yes, because I thought, come on, where could they be? Sunday morning, I had to go into the office, a little room on the other side of the house, and I opened up the drawer just beside the computer. Guess what I found?
Your keys. Yep.
Don't ask me how they got there. There was nobody in the house that entire night to that morning, but there they were. So I took the keys and I thought, okay, fine. I looked up to heaven and I said, thank you. And this has happened. And there's been other incidences too, but not quite as dramatic as those two. So there is something at work. So when you talk about your wallet, I just say, yeah, right. It happens.
Yeah. Just in fact, I'm going to ask Rosemary when she comes on here in a few minutes. She has a name for it because we've talked about this. I think she calls them a jute or a jot, and the letters stand for just one of those things. So I think it's JOOTT.
It's not bad. It's not evil. I don't think I don't know, but something happens, like a wink or a blink in time, or something just goes and it appears. Very, very briefly, I know you've got other people on the line, but one time I was making sandwiches for my kids going to school, and I had the butter dish on the side of me, and I was busy making sandwiches. I turned around to the table, got something set up, turned around, butter dish was gone. What the heck?
Did you ever find it again?
Yeah, it was in the fridge. I didn't put it there. And I'm not a freak. I really am not.
I would never suggest such a thing. No. You're among friends.
Said, okay, all right, fine. Play around with me all you want, but nevertheless. And the funny thing about it, the butter was soft when I was putting it on the bread. When I took it out of the fridge 5 minutes before, it was hard as a rock. Now, you figure that out. I cannot.
Right, like it'd been in there for quite some time.
Yeah.
Amazing. Right. Hey, Virginia, thanks. Great stories. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, I want to go back to the YouTube live chat, and thank you all of you who join me without fail every week. Now, Jordan wanted to know about the federal election happening this fall in Canada, and he says, "I got to know, is it Scheer or Maxime?" He's asking me who I'm voting for. I can't divulge that, but you know my political stripes, so I think you can imagine. Is Scheer up to it, though? That's the question. Because let's face it, it's not going to be the People's Party of Canada. They're a burgeoning young party. They're off on the right foot, but it's just not showing up in the polls at the moment. That could change. However, I see their candidate out in British Columbia was banned from one of the all candidates meeting. So here we go. Talk about. Well, that just smacks of what I was talking about earlier. I'm not suggesting you're criminalizing, the PPC. I'm just saying, that this type of censorship, it's odious. However, I'm concerned about, to say the least, another 4 years of the Liberal government. I don't know that we'll survive it. We probably will, but they'll just, if they get in, they'll stumble along as they have been for the last 4 years, and we'll all be the poorer for it. The question is Andrew Scheer up to the job? I think he's a likable fellow. I'm not sure that he has the, what do you call it, the royal jelly? Do you know what I'm saying? However, they said that about Harper, and he grew on us, didn't he? I mean, I miss him. Good Lord, do I miss him. Maybe Scheer will be, maybe he's a sleeper. Maybe he'll be another Harper. I don't think so. Maybe he's too nice. Maybe he's too nice. I do like Maxime Bernier's, Mad Max's positions, his forthrightness, his willingness to speak about things that no other politician will say out loud. They might think it, but they don't have the fortitude to say it out loud, and he will. And I think he's an important person on the scene, and I hope he does well. Not at the cost of taking votes away from the Conservatives, because let's face it, they're our best hope of Andrew Scheer is all we've got. He's our best and only hope at the moment of getting rid of Trudeau and the Liberals. I don't know. To me, it just seems when the Liberals take power, they don't really have policy ideas. They just feel that they have this they are born to rule. They have this right to be in power, and they just occupy space. And then they proceed to bumble and stumble from one calamity to a scandal to some, bit of corruption to the next until it's time for the election. Is it me? I mean, love or hate our premier here in Ontario, Doug Ford, and I'm a big supporter, but he comes in with bold action and he gets things done, and you may not agree with it, but he's delivering. He's got an agenda and he's taking them off the list. Where is that with the federal Liberals? They campaigned on electoral reform. That lasted 2 weeks. Their big crowning achievement is legalizing marijuana? Really? Is that how you want to go down in the history books? All right. Let's see. Maureen. Is it Maureen in Barrie? Hi, Maureen.
Hi.
Hi. We're just about out of time, so you got to make it quick. You have a disappearing item. Disappearing item.
We're talking about things disappearing and reappearing.
Yes.
And Sylvia Browne has a term for it's called apporting. Apporting.
That's right. Yes, the late Sylvia Browne.
I've been through that for years and years.
Oh.
And one of the funniest things was like on my mother's side, all had ESP and abilities, but my mother wouldn't let me talk about it. Well, the funny thing was, her wallet disappeared one day. And she went through the whole apartment, stripped everything down. And I'm standing there and looking in that. And just after she finished freaking out, just said, okay, bring it back. And she went back, and there it is sitting right on her bed where she had started looking in the first place.
There you go. My word. What is that all about, Maureen? I don't know. We'll discuss again sometime. Maybe I'll pick it up with Rosemary on the other side. She is waiting in the wings. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, Our paranormal news roundup next on The Conspiracy Show.
This is Zoomer Radio Toronto. CFZM FM and CFZM AM. Owned and operated by MZ Media Incorporated.
Toronto, Canada, Earth. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett on Zoomer Radio.
Hey, thanks for inviting me into your home. Long haul truck, RV, camper, taxi, your parents' basement, your loft, that greasy spoon just off the interstate, and your cabin in the woods. Hi, y'all, to everyone listening in on our flagship station, Zoomer Radio, AM 740 and 96.7 FM in Toronto. And hello to all of you checking us out on one of our affiliate stations across North America. Hi to those of you still using the Conspiracy Show app. No longer available in the Apple Store or on Google Play. But if you have it, hold on to it, because once you delete it, you won't get it back. If it still works, keep using it. I'm glad you're joining us. And of course, those of you on the Zoomer Radio app, which is a terrific app, a free download as well. And, well, thanks for all of you on YouTube watching us on the live stream, as well as those faithful assembled in the live stream chat room. God bless you. However and wherever you're listening, I bid thee the warmest of welcomes, and I thank you for your fine company. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, best-selling author, researcher, investigator in the paranormal, metaphysical, and related fields, including hauntings, psychic skills and protection, afterlife studies and spirit communication, cryptids, alien contact, interdimensional aspects of our extraordinary experiences. She has now more than, I believe it's 70 books published on a wide range of topics, including 9 single-volume encyclopedias and reference work. Her work is translated into 17 languages. She is president and owner of Visionary Living, Inc., a publishing and media production company that includes Visionary Living Publishing and its imprints. She is executive editor of Fate magazine. Her latest titles include Fate Presents Mysteries of the Afterlife and Fate Presents Slips in Time and Space. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, how do you have time to come on my show? How are you?
I love being on your show, Richard. We're out in California for a while. We're just winding up about a month-long trip. And in fact, we just got back from Las Vegas. We were out on a research and working weekend. We were able to take in Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum while we were there. So we got a little fun in too.
Fantastic. Yes, I saw that on Facebook. I've been trolling you on Facebook, actually. Not, but I've been following your exploits all the way from New Orleans for Mardi Gras, all the way to California. I love that picture. You were at a stoplight and you looked out the window. There was Jay Leno.
I know, what a shock. And I just happened to have my cell phone in my hand. I was sitting in the back seat. We were in an Uber en route to our dinner on Sunset Boulevard, our restaurant. And Joe looked over and said, "Oh my gosh, it's Jay Leno." And I was able to get a quick snap in just as the light changed. So the back of his car is a little blurry because he's pulling away.
And unfortunately, he zoomed ahead of us, so we were never able to get, right alongside of him. But it's always fun, when you're spotting celebrities in L.A.
Absolutely. And no mistaking that chin. Yeah, he stands out, that's for sure. Behind the wheel of one of his vintage automobiles. What does he has? Like 100 cars or something? It's quite a collection.
Something. Oh my gosh, yes. And in fact, a friend of mine who lives out there said that she sees him driving around Burbank a lot. I guess he keeps a lot of them in Burbank. And
there you go. I wanted to ask you.
Hitting back.
That's exactly it. I wanted to ask you about the story that I heard a couple of weeks ago, and of course, it's near and dear to my family. Of course, my children, half Greek. My lovely bride is Greek Canadian, and that has to do with Alexander the Great, of course, Macedonian, northern Greece, who ruled most of the known world once upon a time, and now we're hearing. I had always thought that he had succumbed to malaria or something, and there are theories that maybe he was poisoned. But now we're hearing that he may have actually been in some sort of a state of paralysis and may have been alive for 6 days after death. In other words, he was buried alive. Tell me about this.
It's an interesting theory, and the claims were made even in ancient times that Alexander the Great did not decompose for 6 days after his death. Maybe we should say his alleged death. And so this theory, who was put forward by a researcher in New Zealand, she said she spent 6 months researching this, that maybe what he died from was a neurological disorder. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Right.
And it causes the paralysis. And when what her case is that when he went into this paralysis, his breathing became so shallow it might not have even been noticeable, and people just thought he was dead. And it took him 6 days in that state to finally expire. Now, this theory has been put forward before. She's not the first one to do it. And it was kind of dismissed. And the thing is, Richard, I don't think we'll ever really know because, as you mentioned, there have been so many other theories as to what killed him. Now, he died in Babylon. He was marching into Babylon. He was actually told by Chaldean astrologers not to come into the city because it would be fatal to him. So he was forewarned of his own death. He did have to go through a swampy area, so maybe that makes the case for malaria. But there were also theories that he was poisoned with strychnine, that he had some other kind of infectious disease. Maybe it might have been acute pancreatitis brought on by too much alcohol. All kinds of theories which can never be proved.
Of course, no, not without a body.
Well, here's the thing, and I did some research on decomposition when I was studying vampirism. And human bodies decompose differently, and it has to do a lot not only with your age, your physical condition, but what you died of. And that certain diseases, for example, might slow the decomposition process. So whatever he died of, it might have been something that just slowed that decomposition process. And Plutarch talked about him being embalmed by the Egyptians, but we don't know exactly when that happened. And the Egyptians didn't embalm people right away, I don't think. So it's a mystery, and it's a mystery I don't think we'll ever solve. But that's the latest theory in the mix.
There you go. Well, that's my worst fear, and I know a lot of people would share that. It's not something that we have to worry about as much today, and that is, being buried alive. But during the Victorian era, it happened, and this sort of led to this whole idea of the graveyard shift, where people would sit around in cemeteries, listening to make sure no one was buried alive. They would listen for the screams of those recently buried. But can you imagine anything worse, Rosemary?
I think it would be one of a person's deepest fears. And sadly, it probably did happen to people that they came back to consciousness, finding themselves buried alive. And there was another practice too back then, to have a bell on top of the ground and a string going into the casket. And that hopefully if someone did revive in that condition, they would be able to pull the bell, and that could be heard by one of the cemetery caretakers. You have to assume, however, that somebody's going to be around to hear that bell.
You would hope.
But
And hence the term dead ringer. That's where that came from.
Dead ring, you're absolutely right. And there are so many conditions that can cause, pseudo-death or pseudo-thanatosis, as it's called. And in earlier times, they didn't have all the sophisticated measurements that we have now. If it just appeared that a person had stopped breathing, they were often presumed dead. We don't know from Alexander the Great's case if his body was still warm. Even if he had a neurological disorder that paralyzed him, his body would have still been warm. And so you would think that might be a clue to people, people examining individuals for signs of death, that even if breath was not apparent, the body wouldn't be cold and be turning blue.
Right. On a related note, what about this poor woman, 62? I believe, was this in Russia? She was wrongly pronounced dead. She wakes up in the morgue. They discover that she's still alive, and then she dies of hypothermia.
Such a sad story. And she was a grandmother, 62 years old. She was drinking with relatives at a party, and she might have just passed out from too much alcohol. And this might be another case of apparent lack of breathing. People thought she was dead. A policeman is called, and he certifies her as dead himself without calling any medical authorities. So she's taken away to the morgue and lays there for a while, and then she revives. Now, they did try to resuscitate her, but she had suffered so much damage from hypothermia from being in the morgue that she wound up passing away anyway, which is a very sad ending to a death that really didn't need to happen.
No, it is. Now, this is something that seems to be more common. It doesn't happen a lot in North America, but it's certainly in developing countries, the developing world, and once in a while in Europe. We hear these stories, I would say almost, maybe once every 3 or 4 months. There seems to be one of these, people that have misdiagnosed, if you will, the ultimate misdiagnosis, waking up in a morgue. And again, imagine now, not quite as dire circumstances waking up in a coffin 6 feet under, but that's got to be absolutely, frightening. I mean, I wonder how many people actually wake up in a morgue and then die of a heart attack because they're so frightened.
Well, they do keep a lot of the bodies in these like drawers or body racks. And if you were placed on a rack and then shoved into one of these drawers, it would be like waking up in a coffin. And I would think that would be a very high risk, that you would your severe panic would throw you into something fatal like a heart attack.
Right. Got to ask you about, you and I have talked about demonic possession many times over the years, but there seems to be a real uptick in the number of exorcisms going on. Even the current Pope is talking about the need for more exorcists in the Vatican. What do you think is going on here?
I think there's a number of things going on, and some of it's fueled, at least in this country and in some other Western countries, fueled by the media and some of these paranormal reality shows that want to put a demonic emphasis on everything. So people start to get fearful that there's a lurking demonic danger and that somehow they could be at risk, and that any troubles that they have, any troubles, even with natural explanations, can then be projected onto demonic interference. And whenever you have unstable times, and there is a lot of social instability in our country, in parts of the Western world and in many countries, that raises fear in the population, and that fear does get projected onto a common devil, so to speak, literally. And so we find increases in cases like this. Interestingly, even though, and now the Catholic Church, I might add as an aside, has gone up and down over history in its emphasis on exorcisms. They were hugely popular in the 1700s, somewhat in the 1600s, during a time after the Reformation, when the Protestants and Catholics were battling for religious territory. There was quite an emphasis on exorcisms and in terms of who can do it better, us or them, so to speak. And then when we get into the age of science and enlightenment and the age of reason, these were considered superstitious practices and they were suppressed. And then they started coming back again in modern times. And the media and many psychologists will often lay the blame at that at the feet of Hollywood in movies like The Exorcist. But interestingly, even though the Pope has called for more exorcists to meet the demand, literally, it's not Catholics who are primarily having the problems. It's other faiths that are, well, once again, we're seeing like this competition with the Catholics for driving out the devil. And some of it comes from the fundamentalist Protestant and the Pentecostals, charismatics, who have rituals for driving out the devil. And from other parts of the world, like Latin America and Africa, where you've got things like Santeria, voodoo, tribal practices, which also have a lot of rituals for driving away evil spirits. And the belief in evil spirits would be fairly high, that they would be considered to be common interference agents in people's lives. So I think there are all of these factors at play here, and how long this trend is going to last remains to be seen. But certainly in Western media, we have all of these paranormal reality shows which are emphasizing the demonic. And it's not just ghosts anymore. It's got to be evil spirits and demons that are plaguing places and people. And that encourages other people to think along those lines and then to project that onto their own issues.
Sort of a mass hysteria?
It could. I think some of these cases are the result of mass hysteria. Where do we draw the line between an actual knowing how much of these situations are due to an actual increase in demonic interference versus people's belief in an increase in interference?
Rare though they may be, do you believe that there are genuine cases of demonic possession?
I do. And I still think that they're in the minority. I think it does happen in unusual cases where the boundaries around a person, for whatever reason, are completely ruptured and they are preyed upon by evil spirits that start taking them over mentally and emotionally and then physically. In some cultures, this is believed to be kind of a common thing, that you could fall prey to evil spirits fairly easily. I don't think it's as prevalent as a lot of people might believe based upon their exposure to this in the media. Be that as it may, there is, and has been now for some years, a demand for more exorcism services, and the Catholic Church has not been able to meet that demand among their own followers. And so there is an emphasis now on training more priests in exorcism.
I know a Protestant pastor who claims that his phone is ringing off the hook, that he just can't keep up with the number of cases. Now, he's not just exercising individuals. Primarily, he's going into homes and exercising them, and he maintains that there are no such things as ghosts. If you have some sort of activity like that, it is demonic, full stop. What are your thoughts on that?
I disagree. I think that there are lots of haunted places that have just plain residual activity. It's non-interactive. It doesn't have an intelligent locus point to it. It's there as a psychic recording, and that's what you're most likely to find when you have some activity in a place. When you have interactive spirits, it is my opinion that yes, a lot of them are tricksters, or they're upset. They're agents of upset, and some of them seem to like to mess around with people. But the full-on demonic attack, which would be perceived from a Christian perspective as some sort of agent of Satan, out to destroy a person and that person's soul, I think is still a case in the minority.
All right, Rosemary.
And I do not think that.
Sorry, we'll take a quick time out. We'll come back. We'll talk about people who are returning to live in Chernobyl, the area around that dangerous nuclear reactor. We'll also talk about celebrities who've had near-death experiences, and imagine spending 20 days in total isolation. We'll talk about that as well. Pitch darkness on a bet. 20 days. Rosemary Ellen Guiley stays with us right here on The Conspiracy Show. Don't go away.
When in doubt, blame the government. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
To celebrate Zoomer 8th anniversary, we went on the hunt for Zoomers who really know how to...
We've taken a big financial hit by losing the monetization on YouTube. So now I need your help more than ever. I hope you'll consider becoming an official supporter of The Conspiracy Show, the YouTube channel, and my podcast. What you need to do, go to patreon.com/.
Dave's Corner Garage and Young Steele's Auto Group have your chance to
A pair of tickets to the hottest game in town.
the Leafs and Lightning at Scotiabank Arena. Dave'sCornerGarage.com has details. The best Ford deals are at Young Steele's, and the best Leafs tickets are always free tickets. We can't afford the other kind.
Toronto versus Tampa Bay, March 11th. Enter to win at Dave'sCornerGarage.com.
The truth is not out there. It's right here. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
Welcome back. Coming to you live from the little studio beneath the stairs here in Thornhill above Toronto. And Ian Robertson back in Liberty Village behind the big audio board. My story producer, Albert, on assignment. And Ryan is producing the live stream from his lair. Rosemary Ellen Guiley stays with us for the full hour. A little bit later, we'll talk about Black Mirror Scrying, this form of divination. Right now, we're doing our monthly paranormal news roundup. And I got to ask you about what's going on in Ukraine. Chernobyl, of course, that horrific nuclear meltdown at the reactor there back in the mid-'80s. And now people are moving back into that area, even though, as far as I know, radiation levels are still in the danger zone. What's going on there, Rosemary?
It's a puzzling situation, and you wonder how people could voluntarily go back to such a contaminated area. That was in 1986, and it was probably the world's worst nuclear disaster in history. 10 days. This damaged reactor for 10 days spewed out this high level of radiation into the countryside, and thousands of people were contaminated. They died. Some of them died fairly quickly. Some of them died much later as they stayed in the area and contracted various forms of cancer. Children died. a huge area around Chernobyl was literally quarantined and left just as wreckage. And now people are creeping back in. And they're even growing crops and eating the food that they raise. They've got animals that are grazing on this land, and they're eating the meat of the animals. And nobody knows what the long-term effects are going to be. And what some of these people are saying is that, well, they're poor, for one thing, and the land is very cheap. People just abandon it wholesale, and so they can buy lots of land very inexpensively. Some feel that they have nowhere else to go. One elderly woman who was interviewed even made the odd comment that, well, even though they might be exposed to fatal radiation, it was better than being bombed or shot in a war, and which is a curious juxtaposition of, choices of death. There was another man interviewed who said, hey, I've been living here now for years with me and my wife, and we're fine. We eat our crops and our animals, and nothing has happened to them yet. And I think that this does not bode well, that people will develop forms of cancer. There will be birth defects. From a paranormal perspective, Richard, I wonder what's lurking around that landscape.
Oh, interesting. Right. How do you mean?
Well, whenever you have a disaster like that and mass deaths that result, even if some of them didn't happen right away, just tied to that event, it creates this heavy thought form, coalesced energy that could lodge in that landscape, literally in the land itself and the ruins that are still there. And there could be all kinds of haunting phenomena going on, which, due to the nature of the disaster and the type of deaths that people endured from radiation poisoning, could be quite horrific in terms of the haunting presences in the landscape. There could be apparitions of the dead. There could be even mutant forms, phantom forms roaming the landscape. No one's done any research on that yet. I would be very curious about that.
Well, no one wants to get close to the scene, but imagine how desperate someone would have to be in order to buy a home and live in, next to Chernobyl. And expose themselves to that deadly radiation. That's a very sad situation. I want to ask you about recently. A number of people celebrities have come out and talked about their near-death experiences. Well, some of them it happened quite a while ago, but it's just being reported within the last few months. And one of the more high-profile celebrities who discussed her near-death experience was the late Elizabeth Taylor. I guess she came out on the Oprah Winfrey Show back in 1992. So let's chat a little bit about celebrities' near-death experiences or after-death experiences.
They do conform to things that many people describe in NDEs. And Elizabeth Taylor described seeing, it was during one of her operations, and she had so many operations during the course of her life. And she went into a tunnel. She saw herself leaving her body, and she saw her third husband, who was Mike Todd. And she said that she was so happy to see him. And he had died in 1958. Now, her experience happened in the early 60s, one of her famous back surgeries. And she kind of wanted to stay with him, but he told her that she couldn't, that she had to fight to go back. She had a lot of things she still had to do. And so she returned to her body, and then she woke up. And she discovered that the doctors thought she had actually permanently died, and they had even pronounced her dead. This is very common where if someone dies in a hospital setting, the first thing that they become aware of is that they're detached from their body. They're often looking down on the operating scene, watching the medical team around them. Then they start to pull further and further away. They may go through a tunnel, they may not. And then they have frequently interactions with loved ones who are on the other side. And for example, the actor, I think he's a comedian too.
Tracy Morgan.
That's it, Tracy Morgan.
Yes.
I couldn't think of his first name.
Saturday Night Live alumnus.
Tracy Morgan. Yes. He meets his father, who died, and oftentimes the person will have the desire to stay. Everything seems so pleasant. If they're so happy to reunite, they want to stay. And his father told him, no, you can't. And he said he even had a conversation with God, and that God told him, he said, your room ain't ready yet. I thought that was an amusing way to put it. It's like, your room here in the afterlife, you can't come here yet. It ain't ready yet.
Exactly.
And people are often told that they have to go back. Sometimes they're given a choice, but sometimes they're told you can't stay. You really do have to go back because there are things you haven't done yet.
And Jane Seymour, a British actress, what happened to her? She had kind of an anaphylactic. She went into anaphylactic shock or something after receiving I guess they tried to administer an antibiotic, and it went into her vein instead of her muscle.
Yes, and I didn't realize that you could put antibiotics into to muscle, but yes, it sent her into anaphylactic shock, and she was resuscitated. She said that she saw a white light. This is also another common description, and she too was detached from her body, looking down. She saw herself in the bedroom with a nurse, and frequently they'll see medical professionals trying to revive the body very frantically. And she felt very calm about it. She said that afterwards she had a whole new perspective on life. This is a very common change, that people come back convinced of the afterlife if they had any doubts in the past. They're not afraid of dying anymore, and their values change in life. As she put it, it's the material things aren't important anymore. And she said it's not about the yachts and the houses and even awards like an actress might get. She said it's all about love. And that's the important thing, the love that you share with family and friends, the difference you make in the lives of other people. So that's a tremendous shift in values
Right.
that a lot of NDE people have.
Right. I've read in cases where marriages have broken up as a result of an NDE because, as you say, the character, that person changes so fundamentally, it's like you're living with a different person.
In fact, the divorce rate is quite high among NDE experiencers, and for those reasons that they just literally become different people, and their spouses have a hard time understanding that. Maybe a plunge into spirituality that had not been present in the relationship before. They may feel sort of materially abandoned because, let's say, the principal breadwinner in the family doesn't feel a need to go out and make tons of money anymore. It's not about getting the next big house.
Right,
they want to do something more compassionate and humanitarian.
I got to ask you quickly, we're just about out of time here, but this gentleman who took on a bet, he bet that he could survive 20 days in pitch darkness, in total isolation. He didn't make it. He didn't last the whole 20 days. Why would anyone do that? And what happened?
It all revolved around money. And this was with a fellow poker player. And they engage in something called a prop bet, which is basically, it's not during a poker game, but it's something else you challenge somebody to do. It's kind of like to test your resolve and mettle sort of thing. And so the bet was made, they each put up $100,000 that this one fellow could last for 30 days in total darkness. And at about 20 days, he was still doing very well. And so the other guy who stood to lose $1,000 was able to talk him into a buyout of $60-some thousand. And now during this time in darkness, he was given food, but at irregular intervals. They didn't want him to have a sense of a passage of time, and that can make a difference in how well you weather something. He may have been able to track it, they think, through outside noises. But the thing is that this guy was really playing with fire, because individuals who have been deprived of light and communication and human contact, if it goes on long enough, they go insane. They even die.
Wow. Let's pick this up on the other side, Rosemary, because this will be a nice segue into Black Mirror Scrying. We'll talk about that as well. Rosemary Ellen Guiley stays with us right here on The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Syrett. Don't go away.
If you're sure your phone isn't tapped, call now. 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Good pricing, and then there's I know a guy pricing. At Goldman's Appliances, we know a guy. Actually, a lot of guys. And they make sure we have their best pricing, which means you get their best pricing too. Case in point, right now you can save up to $500 on select Bosch dishwashers. For the best prices on appliances like Bosch, you'll always get more at Goldman's. Visit Goldman's.com for details.
Norm Edwards, come on down. You're the first celebrity at the Canadian International Auto Show.
Here's more of what you will see on day one.
It's you and your family in a new car.
Join us this Friday at the Canadian International Auto Show.
Be part of Zoomer Radio's live broadcast from 1 to 6 p.m.
Gate admission is $16 for seniors 60 and over on opening day of the 2019 Canadian International Auto Show, Metro Toronto Convention Centre.
Come on down.
Your home was once your comfort zone, but now you have an accessibility challenge that turns a home into a hazard. The solution? The Total Home Safety Check. Total Access Center will come to your home, check every room for potential hazards, and then suggest the best safety solutions. It's sort of like your home adapting to you. Book your no-charge assessment with the Total Access Center. Call 416-546-1000. Yes, the Total Home Safety Check is free. And isn't that comforting?
Hi, I'm Naz. And I'm Wally of the Naz and Wally Sports Hour, sports radio for Zoomers who get excited about the Jays' Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Because they remember how great a player his dad was. Call in to the Naz and Wally Sports Hour, Sunday morning at 9 on Zoomer Radio.
When the party gets big, time to dial it up with Pizzaville. Pizzaville's 3-topping party pizza is 24 square slices for just $24. That's $1 a slice. Dial pound 3636 from your cell or use the new app.
Shaking the world and seeing what falls. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
Welcome back. Rosemary Ellen Guiley stays with us. Her website, visionaryliving.com. And we were talking about, just want to finish up this amazing story, this gentleman who made a bet, $100,000, that he could immerse himself in total isolation, pitch darkness for 30 days. And you were saying that he lasted like 20 days and was doing quite well. You said the risk, though, that someone who does this could risk insanity or even death. How so?
Well, for example, in Philadelphia, there was a big prison called Eastern State Penitentiary, and it's closed as a prison now. It's a historical place and very popular with ghost hunters. But during the early days, some of the prisoners had severe isolation imposed upon them. This was like a Quaker approach. And they were deprived of human contact. They could not speak, and they were not spoken to. And while they were not in total darkness, their cells were dark. And the belief was these sentences would go on for some time, like a year or more. The belief was, and the Quakers were big on silence, of course, and they still practice silence in their religious services. So their attitude was, well, you force somebody into isolation like that, they've got plenty of time to contemplate their bad ways, and this is how they're going to, make the change to rehabilitate themselves. Well, it was a disaster because depending upon the fortitude of the prisoners, some of them didn't last very long. They had psychotic breakdowns, permanent insanity. They became ill. Some of them died. It was such a disaster that the program was scrapped after a while. Human beings are not made to be deprived of light, communication, and human contact. Now, this fellow who survived the 20 days, he's feeling pretty good about it, and he said he was even willing to entertain higher bets to go longer. He said, he thought he could do 40 days. It's playing with fire, and he might be able to pull it off once, maybe twice, but it would be at risk to his well-being. Some years ago, I took a trip to Egypt, and it was one of these spiritual pilgrimage kind of trips, and we had a night inside the Great Pyramid in the King's Chamber. We got to go all through the interior of the pyramid, and then the night ended in the King's Chamber, where we had a kind of a spiritual ritual of rebirth. And part of that was to sit in total darkness for just an hour after the ritual. And when the flashlights were extinguished and this total darkness descended, it was scary. Because in total darkness, you cannot see your hand in front of your face. And so, of course, if you keep your eyes open, the eyes will start playing tricks. You start seeing things. You can imagine what somebody in total darkness for days on end could be going through.
Because if the brain is robbed of any external stimuli, it will start manufacturing its own, right?
It will. And your inner demons literally could come out and get projected into the environment. So that hour was one of the longest hours I had to sit in total darkness like that. I was very glad when the lights came on. I can't imagine doing that for 20 days. And so it's kind of disturbing to see someone think that it's like no big deal. I don't think he realizes what the potential dangers are.
Right. I've done the tranquility tank where you're in the dark, but you're floating in a sort of a saline solution rather. It's quite peaceful. And to do an hour, there's no sound except the dripping water. But I can't imagine doing, more than an hour of that. Now, this is kind of an interesting segue into Black Mirror scrying, because the idea of staring into a black mirror for the purposes of divination. First of all, explain how that works and what the mirror looks like and what its purpose is.
Well, black mirror is a piece of glass that's been coated black on the reverse side instead of silvered. And it creates a shiny surface that has a dull black look to it. And it's been used in occultism for centuries as a way of contacting the spirit world. And before that, before we had mirrors, people used dark things like dark bowls filled with water or ink, black stones that were rubbed to be shiny, even soot and oil mixed together on the hand. People in ancient times discovered that gazing into a shiny surface does something to the consciousness that seems to open the gateways to the spirit world. And you can have contact for prophecy and divination and contact with the dead. So in today's times, the black mirror is used primarily as a tool for contacting the dead. It can be used for divination and other kinds of psychic work. And by gazing into it steadily in kind of a very unfocused way, it does fatigue the eyes, and it does something to the psychic faculty so that your natural psychic ability starts coming forward, and you can start having visions, and you can hear things and feel things. If you set your intention to contact the dead and ask to meet someone, for example, who has passed to the other side, you may be able to have some kind of contact with them, which manifests in various ways. For some people, it's literally like seeing pictures or even movies on the mirror surface itself.
Okay,
And
we'll
for other
leave it right
people-
there, Rosemary. We'll take a quick time out, come back, and continue to delve into the divination technique of Black Mirror Scrying. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, my guest, right here on The Conspiracy Show.
Question everything. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett on Zoomer Radio.
Janice Honeyman, Portfolio Manager at Mackey.
People listening right now don't have a comprehensive financial plan, and I ask what you're waiting for? To the other half that do, if your plan involves taking big risks, that's not investing, that's gambling. But if you want an achievable financial plan and someone to help you grow your portfolio at a decent clip while also protecting to the downside, then I would love to hear from you.
Retire without worrying. Go to JaniceHoneyman.com.
Magic trick number 12. Now your windows can let in twice as much light as they did before. It's simple. Get rid of the screen. Testing shows that fixed bug screens actually reduce natural light by 50%. So the people at Magic Windows developed a screen that's integrated into the window frame. When you don't need it, you just slide it back into the frame. Poof. More natural light. MagicWindow.ca. It's not really magic. It's just better, smarter thinking.
Every Stan Astaire lift starts with Stan.
Who's the hockey star?
Stan, that's my granddaughter. She's a little pro.
It's nice to see you out and about. How's the stair lift working?
I don't worry about stairs anymore, Stan. My Stan Astaire lift runs effortlessly. Score one for your team who looked after me so well.
Did someone say score?
That's my girl. Stan Astaire lifts. Ask yourself, how long can you stay in the home you love without one? Call 1-888-391-1197.
Calling all Bell TV subscribers. You are one of the lucky 2.5 million viewers who can catch a free preview of One TV right now. One TV is the only channel with the best fitness programs you can do from the comfort of your own home, like yoga and Pilates, plus catch shows like Detox and World's Best Diet with practical tips for mindful living. As winter sets in, why not stay in and work out with One TV? Now in free preview for all Bell TV subscribers at channel 1606.
When in doubt, blame the government. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
Welcome back. Hey, just a reminder, next week on the program, Derek Robinson will be with me for the full 2 hours. He's the president of an organization that helps targeted individuals, and he believes he is a long-standing targeted individual. So Derek Robinson next week on The Conspiracy Show, talking about mind control and surveillance, voice-to-skull technology, etc., etc. All right, Rosemary Ellen Guiley is with us. We're talking about a divination technique called Black Mirror Scrying. Nostradamus used this, did he not?
He did. He used a bowl filled with dark liquid. And in some reports, it's a bowl filled with ink. And in other versions, it's a bowl filled with blood. It probably was ink. And he would stare into it. It was a big bowl, and it was on a tripod. And he would sit in his darkened study and stare into it. And then these visions arose that he recorded in his famous prophecies. And this is a process that can happen for anyone who gazes into a dark, shiny surface like a black mirror. And the visions may appear on the surface of the mirror, like you're looking at a television screen, for example, or they may see very little in the actual mirror itself, but these psychic impressions are seen in an interior way on the mental screen. People may hear messages and hear very distinct voices. There are external phenomena that can happen as well. I've had many cases where there have been poltergeist-like effects that break out in a room of people scrying. Apparitions appear. People feel touched. It can be, for some people, a very emotional experience. But it's a technique of opening up natural psychic abilities. And so the mirror itself is just a tool. It activates your psychic ability, and then the results then depend on how an individual gets psychic impressions and information.
We should point out you've written extensively on this subject, and you have a book called The Art of Black Mirror Scrying, and people can order that through your bookshop at visionaryliving.com. Now, have you tried this? Have you practiced the art of black mirror scrying, Rosemary?
I have for quite some time, Richard. I became interested in the black mirrors back in the 1980s, around the late 1980s, after reading accounts of how shiny surfaces were used in divination and occultism for contacting the spirit world, and also for developing psychic ability, because if you use one repeatedly, it does sharpen up the psychic faculty. And then in the 1990s, I became very interested when Raymond Moody, who popularized the term near-death experience, he coined the term near-death experience, came out with a book called Reunions. And Dr. Moody had discovered on his own the ancient art of crystal gazing, using a shiny surface to contact the spirit world. And he coined the term psychomantium, place of spirit, and felt that using a black mirror had some therapeutic benefits, because he found in experimenting with people that when individuals had contact with the dead and they got some reassuring message, or even just the contact itself, it alleviated a lot of their grief and worry about the well-being of loved ones on the other side. And so I took some training from Dr. Moody on his psychomantium technique and process, and applied it to my own work that I was already doing with black mirrors. And then I discovered, just in talking about black mirrors in my lectures and workshops, that other people were very interested in doing this and learning about it too. So my husband Joe and I started making black mirrors for our classes, because I couldn't find a good commercial source of them. And we started teaching other people how to scry, which is, it's an old Middle English term, which means to discern dimly. And I like that term, scry, because there's a mystery and a power to it. And we've been doing that now for about 6 or 7 years on a concerted effort. We have quite a bit of demand for that. And we've traveled all over the country. We're going to be taking it into England this year as well. Ancient techniques have just been reimagined.
There has to be more to it than just staring into, a blackened mirror. What is the actual technique? How do you do it?
Well, I believe that setting the stage is very important. It's preparing yourself and your consciousness for this. The biggest obstacle that people have, especially if they're beginners at any kind of psychic work, is suspending disbelief. Because if they have any sort of results at all, their first reaction is going to be, oh, I'm just making this up, or that's what I thought would happen, or that's what I hoped would happen, when in fact they're probably having a genuine experience. So when we do a workshop, and I tell people that if you do this on your own, these are good things to do as well, because you have you make all the factors conducive to entering into this liminal space. It's liminal consciousness, and the mirror really acts as a bridge between ordinary consciousness and the astral plane and the spirit realm. So it's important to do it in dim light. Doesn't matter whether it's day or night. Dim light will fatigue the physical eyes. And I like playing a meditational music in the background, not with lyrics, just music, and doing a meditation ritual before I begin of contemplating what I'm about to do, setting my intention. It's important to have a focus and an intention to do any kind of psychic work. Now, when we do a workshop, I do guide people through a meditation process, and I use some light hypnosis techniques to get people relaxed. And so they try and get their busy brain out of the way. However, the mirror journey itself is uniquely personal. And so I coach people on how to look into the mirror. You want to look in a very soft, unfocused way. You kind of let your gaze fall into the mirror. You don't want to see a reflection in it. And even though it's black, it is reflective. And you position it so that you're seeing as little as possible in the environment, so that it's more like a blank slate. And that this then becomes a doorway to something else. And so you allow that doorway to open, and then you wait. You don't try to force anything. You open up the door, you ask for some contact with a particular person. Some people like to have it open, like, is there anybody there who can come and meet with me, and wait for things to happen. And for some people, they happen very quickly, and for other people, not. People who have experience in psychic work and meditation usually get faster results than people who don't. But we've had beginners who've never done any sort of work like that have pretty phenomenal results.
We're just about out of
last. Oh.
Sorry, we're just about out of time. I just wanted to ask you. So, have you ever had anyone from the other side, perhaps a dearly departed, a relative or so forth, come through while Black Mirror is scrying?
Oh yes, many times. I've had my father and my mother and my grandmother come through, and most of the people in the workshops, the sharing that we do afterwards, will report contact as well, and some of it's unexpected. It's not the person they ask for, but somebody else who winds up being very significant to them shows up, and they have some kind of meaningful contact, even with pets. And that's what some people want sometimes, is to connect with their pets on the other side.
Absolutely. Rosemary, we'll have to meet again on the other side. Next month, we'll do it all over again. It's a date. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Good night.
Good night. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, visionaryliving.com. All right. Back next week with a brand new program, and it'll be coming to you live from my little studio beneath the stairs. Hope you'll be along for that ride. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There's nothing concealed that won't be revealed, and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper. Proclaim from the rooftops. Move over, Aphrodite. I'm coming home, or at least up the stairs. Good night.